preparing to live stream. But the last time I got a feedback, I don't know why.
Because the last time you were listening to live on your phone.
No, it was coming on.
Oh.
All right, redirecting to YouTube. All right. I need to take off the YouTube thing once it comes up. All right. Georgia, how are you?
I still haven't got it, Paul. I still haven't got the video. I don't see what you're talking about at the beginning.
Leroy.
Yeah.
So you see two icons, mute and stop video.
Where is that? Where do I find that?
The left hand bottom of your screen. You see a mute button?
I see start video.
Yeah,
and
start video.
Yeah, and when I press start video, I get a message that says Zoom is unable to detect a camera. Make sure that your camera is powered on.
All right, so mine you have to go into settings and put allow.
How do I go into settings?
You have a little thing that looks like a spanner.
At the bottom?
No.
At the bottom? Where?
No, you have to go into your computer. Just minimize, right?
Minimize the screen.
Minimize the screen. Go to settings on your computer. I do not know why that should happen.
Settings, where do I find settings now?
When you go on your screen, you should see a settings button. Or if you have type here to search, on you just go settings.
Search for settings?
No, you see at the bottom of your left hand, when you go, if you're on Windows, it says
type here to search.
Yeah, just put in settings.
I try get on a meeting about my computer speaker and I seem to be working. I don't know what because I just come off the church service.
Oh. Okay, I am in settings now. What do I do now?
Look, go down the line, and you're supposed to say microphone. And tap allow, and you press the little thing, the little green thing that says allow.
I'm trying to tell them that I'm not hearing.
Let me tell you what I have. I see on my thing.
But me talk to you later.
System, network and internet, accounts, ease of access, update and security, devices, personalization, time and language.
Go to devices. No, it's apps.
Huh?
I don't know whether it's device or app. Alisa, try lead Leroy through. I'm not familiar.
I don't know how to do it. I was just going to tell him to log out and come back in to leave me.
No, but if he doesn't have, if by chance, sometimes your computer just lick these things up.
Yeah.
You don't have access to video.
Let me go to devices, as you said. Devices.
But if you go to apps, you're supposed to say Zoom call. And you're supposed to say allow.
Go back to Zoom.
Look at the apps you have on your, the different apps you have.
I don't know, Oli.
So you're supposed to
This doesn't make sense. Oh.
It doesn't say Zoom apps, Leroy.
Eh?
Those are Zoom apps.
Burke, Danny's having some issues with her. So she's not hearing anybody, but we're hearing her.
I know. Again, is our how she goes on to our speakers.
But we're hearing her. So how are we hearing her?
Okay, now I'm hearing you, Paul. Thank you.
Okay. Right.
Alisa, are you speaking?
She was.
Not anymore.
Okay,
But
all right, thanks. Everything is good, thanks.
Good.
So good evening again. I trust everybody is fine.
Good afternoon, dear.
Good. Oh, the one and eternally youthful Paul Burke.
No, I'm not. Angela Duncan Thompson is always so great to see her, as well as Kate, as well as Georgia. But
Thank you,
Duncan,
sir.
good to see you.
It's always good to see all the comrades. Trust me. It's good for me.
Hi, everyone. Just to let you know, I'm at work, so I just have to leave this on and I can only listen, just to let you know.
Okay.
What kind of night job you do, Duncan? It will be 10 o'clock, 5 and 3, 8 o'clock in London now.
Yes, I am working at an event. It's a show, and I'm working on the CCTV monitor.
All right, ma'am.
Okay. Ashton,
I'm still, I signed out and came in back and I'm still having the same thing. Can't get a video. Zoom is unable to take a camera.
I don't know why, Leo.
Well, I just have to be faceless on this for today, I suppose. Is that okay?
Paul, remember to make me host again.
Oh, thank you. Hi, Katie. Your mic, you're muted, my dear.
Ah. So nobody will be able to see the lovely shirt I put on for this meeting.
Hello. Can you know?
Yes, Katie.
Yes, just send greetings from Brussels. I'm back in Brussels now. So an hour later than in London. It's wonderful seeing you all.
Okay.
Boy, Kate, you spin my head the amount of places you just keep twisting and moving. But it's good.
Yeah, been the story of my life.
I hear you,
You know
girl.
that goes to Georgia, where your two accomplices gone? I heard it's Dubai.
They are? Well, I'm happy for
Mali.
them. It's a nice place to be. So if they're there, I hope they enjoy it as much as I did when I was.
You know, I'm afraid of playing.
Hmm?
But you know, I'm afraid of playing.
Who's afraid of playing? You?
I've always been afraid of playing. But I like playing. I'm afraid of them, and I like them.
Okay.
Comrades, good evening. Good evening, comrades.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
You know, that myself and John Ball and somebody else
Mhm.
were to go to Iran,
Mhm.
22nd of May, 1979.
Mhm.
And do you know that on the morning I reached the airport, suitcase, when I turn back,
You had a panic attack.
no panic attack, but I feel like flying.
Okay, I hear you.
Yeah, I know. But I'm not in charge of the meeting. Okay, hold on.
If it can help you at all, Paul, I must just tell you quickly. Because of my job, traveling is a part of my job for all of these years, every reason. And I had a flying phobia, a literal flying phobia for about 10 years. but I was able to get rid of it. Mhm. So it's possible to get rid of it
No, man, I
if ever
sleep
you
on
want.
the plane. If I'm going to travel, I don't sleep the night before. We just sleep on the whole flight.
Which is a thing I cannot do.
Mhm.
You can't sleep.
No, sir.
I don't go on plane and sleep.
Regardless of how short or how long the trip is. When I went to Dubai 14 hours, I did not sleep a wink. I watched 3 or 4 movies for the entire night.
Mhm.
But I didn't sleep. I just can't sleep. It's the same thing when I went to Israel. Just can't sleep.
Mhm.
Well, I mean, I like fly. I like my feet on the ground in Jamaica.
I hear you,
Yeah,
but
that
sometimes
is.
it is what is your thing. I don't mind flying, but I just don't sleep on a flight.
Yeah, one thing though, living in Europe, that I can avoid flying when I have the time, obviously. And since I've officially retired from my job, um, I try to take the train or drive or take boats, ferries, a lot more. I like having my feet on the ground too, but I like boats and I will drive and take the train. But I like to move still. I like to travel. Yeah. Um, Georgia, where are you?
New York,
Oh, okay, great, because it's
David,
looking light,
you
looking
see
nice.
the
hold
greenery
on,
behind
hold
me
on.
is
Is
my
it the
H.
new link that you're using? Yeah,
That's nice.
yeah. I'm going on now.
It gives me a little feel of home with all that greenery.
I'm hearing you. It's beautiful. Looks good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah. Are we early or?
No, you're not early. Others are late, and Leroy will, and Alisa. I think we normally give it 15 minutes. So I think that we'll start sharp at 4:15. I'm in and out of
Okay.
today. I have to apologize. I'm in and out. But there's a
Mhm.
JC All Boys meeting that
Oh
I
yeah.
have to show my face at.
Mhm. Mhm.
Are you not ashamed to show your face there?
Is it okay for me to chair still without the
Yeah,
video?
man. Yeah, man.
All
Yeah,
right.
man. I've
Just
been
tell me
one of
when,
the
just tell me when you're ready.
I've been one of the Hawks, James.
Oh,
But
what
Paul,
is
I
it?
get the decision has already been taken. You're trying to get your money back.
No, you can't get back the money. You know, so the green a cartoon today. Where the man I hurdled over the chairs, man. It's the only man I know have him cake and eat it.
Yeah.
Where is
But,
my
you know,
thing?
I wanted to ask KD or one of them or Ronnie, is the government service they usually can retire people in the public interest? Apparently, it doesn't apply in education. I know
I
they've
think
done it to
so.
civil servants and police officers who have never, and people have not been charged with anything. You know, they might be things submerged. We could call it information against them. So I don't know. Apparently, it's not applicable to in education. So they're going to pay Royal must be 100 million of what maybe Paul has contributed 10 million of that.
We're trying to find
But
out how much money to get in.
But
but Paul,
he was seconded for 2 years to the Ministry of Education to become Minister of Education. But he's no longer minister, so he's no longer on secondment.
Exactly.
Mhm.
he went on leave.
It's a illegal special leave because the special leave is for short, specific purposes. So first off, they put him on leave illegally. So that should have made the whole thing null and void in the first place.
Those special leave can't be for more than 2 years.
I don't think it can be for 2 years.
Neither should a secondment. So, but it must have been renewed because he had served for more than 2 years when he was asked to
But
resign.
yeah, but if you
Listen,
read,
I
if
have
you
worked
read
with
the
the
code,
government and I have been on several secondments, especially based on DK's things that he needed. And whenever my secondment was finished in 2 years, I just shift to another department on paper, went on secondment and went back where I
yeah,
was supposed to be, where I was needed. So
yeah.
I don't know how he has been, I don't know if the same thing is applying to him where he has been shifted, but being a public figure like him, the public should have known or should, for the sake of transparency, should be told that he's no longer on secondment to the Ministry of Education. So
It wasn't
No,
known.
but-
It's a long, complicated, cowardly story.
I
But
know.
I believe we now need to get to the main point, and I want to ask Leroy to take charge and to apologize for the fact that Leroy is having a video problem with his camera. All right. So, Leroy, I'm going on mute. Forgive me.
Okay, so I am taking over now.
Correct.
Thank you, Paul. First of all, I'd like to apologize for the fact that you're just hearing my voice, but not seeing me, but perhaps that's a blessing as far as you are concerned. I would like to welcome you to this session of the ongoing discussions on the document that we call the Progressive Manifesto. These discussions are part of the activities for the 50th anniversary of the PNP Youth Organization, which I am told was officially launched in 1972, in July 1972. So next July would make it 50 years. And we have been having activities leading up to that culmination next July. One of these activities has been this series of discussions on what we call the Progressive Manifesto. This is a document that we put together following the election defeat last year of the PNP, when we had perhaps our most disastrous result on record. The party was definitely abandoned by the voters. We got only 16% of the support of the electorate, which was worse than we had the time before. So in thinking about where to go, we decided amongst ourselves that the answer was that we needed to recommit ourselves to a reform of the two-level economy, which has characterized Jamaica for many, many years. We decided that two kinds of actions were needed. Firstly, party reform, and secondly, to put together a basic government program which would aim to reduce the gap between the haves and the have-nots in Jamaican society. We have already discussed party reforms that we are proposing, and the main points in those party reforms covered 5 areas. Firstly, membership, where we said we need to distinguish between members. The party needs to distinguish between members and supporters. That members, as far as we are concerned, need to be people who have greater commitment, not just people who hang around and jump on the bandwagon close to election time. Members need to be like Gideon's army, that is to say, putting quality before quantity. Secondly, we said that there needs to be a mandatory probationary period for people who wish to be members of the party. A mandatory probationary period and a mandatory membership orientation program. Thirdly, that we need to put in place requirements concerning a time threshold for certain representative positions. For example, to be a delegate from a group, one should be a member for at least 7 months. To run for a position within the party, one should be a member for at least 1 year. To be a candidate for local government representing the party, you should have membership in the party for at least 2 years. And to run as a parliamentary candidate for the party, there should be a minimum 3-year membership period. Fourthly, we recommended that the party needs to take on regional organizers. That is to say, one organizer per region who would work with the regional councils and also answerable to the party secretariat. And fifthly and finally, that we need to have a policy convention separate and apart from the party conference. We need to have a policy convention each year, starting in the 6 regions at least, and then perhaps going on to a national convention. So that was part one, the party reforms that we are suggesting. And part two, which is to say the basic government program we are recommending, we started those discussions 2 weeks ago. So this is the second in the series of those discussions on the proposals for government measures, which is to say not a total government program. The focus is on those measures which are aimed at reducing the gap between the haves and the have-nots. 2 weeks ago, we started these discussions by discussing energy, where we had some really path-breaking proposals to put Jamaica on the road to economic independence for the first time at last, by freeing us from the debt trap linked to our ongoing dependence on imported fuel and leading to renewed manufacturing activity, plus the growth of a sovereign wealth fund. Today, we turn our attention to another subject, that of tourism. And if Butch Scott has joined us by now, he has a responsibility of introducing today's presenter. Is Butch with us?
Yeah, man, I'm actually on camera.
Butch, over to you if you're here, if you are present.
Yes, present. Comrades, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, comrade.
I noticed Comrade Burke didn't put the agenda. I was noticed on the agenda. That's not the thing I thought that. So you introduced me as former PNPYO, but since we have a 70s group, we should say I'm a member of the 70s group, you know. You want to put former vice chairman of the YO, so, you know. That's not like a point of clarification there. But comrades, I have the distinct pleasure of introducing our presenter this afternoon. Man, we really don't need any introduction because he's so well known. However, James Walsh is almost synonymous now with Brownstone. And I remember when he was a member of the YO. He went way ahead of us, Paul, by having, remember after 1980, we decided to create a vanguard organization for the YO instead of a mass organization. And James was a vanguard group. And I suppose he got the best of the best in Brownstown to be a member of that group. But the funny thing is that, you know, he didn't go on to become a member of parliament like a few of us, but he has been caretaker for several constituencies in St. Ann, I think. James did a sterling job as principal of the Knox, the community college, the Brownstone Community College, and he's known. In fact, I didn't even realize, James, that you a tournament, a sports tournament was named after you. I didn't know you were interested in badminton, but for those who don't know the YO, James has a competition, the badminton competition, that is named after him. So he's been really recognized. And certainly you would remember that when we were in office, Prime Minister Portia Simpson Miller always referred to him as a pioneer of, really did a novel thing. He trained members to drive trucks. And there was big demand for tractor trailer drivers in Canada. And I'm sure, you know, his name is really on the record of doing these things. I remember when, after Paul demitted office as chairman of the SDC, James took on the job. And the YO, I must say, I'm indeed proud that we made a contribution to the development of local government, local economic development being one of those. And really, if we had another term, we would have been able to transform the Jamaican economy from the bottom up, instead of trying to wait to find some big ideas to get our economy moving forward. So, a comrade of note, contribution, and life of sacrifice to the People's National Party and the people of Jamaica. I have great pleasure introducing our presenter this afternoon, Comrade James Walsh.
Thank you, Comrade Butch. Comrade Chairman Cook, comrades all in the audience, the virtual audience. I'm not seeing all of you, but I know a number of people are there. Welcome. Let me just try to productively use my 13 minutes. As a teacher, I have a tendency, of course, to try to give a historical background to orient what it is we are trying to do before going into the meat of the matter. And I'll say that I start by a brief look, let's just say what it was, what I call post-Columbian Jamaica, because the Jamaica that has existed since the arrival of Columbus is in many ways fundamentally different from the one that existed before. In that the Spaniards came and tried to design a society in which the majority would produce wealth for the benefit of the minority. They were not all that efficient at that, but they were succeeded by the British. And the British magnified this in that they created a slave plantation system that was maybe one of the most powerful machinery in the history of humanity for creating wealth, using the labor of the many for the benefit of a relatively few. And as we all know, I believe, the slave plantation system in the Caribbean played a fundamental role in enabling the industrial revolution that has so transformed the entire world to occur. It was a major driving force in creating the conditions that permitted the industrial revolution to take place. Right? Now, the basic design of that system, where the resources were under the control of the few, and all the system of economy and laws, taxation, everything, was meant to reinforce the situation where the many labored and produced, but the main benefit went to those who were in control. It continued in modified form after the emancipation, and it continued Well, it continues up to today to a large extent. It faced varied challenges. The Morant Bay Uprising was a major one. There were periodic riots, millenarian movements such as the Bedward movement, political and civil agitation continuously, rudimentary trade unionism, and there was, of course, Garveyism. And Garvey, by forming the People's Political Party, presented an overt challenge which articulated a programmatic platform meant to transform that situation, to change the situation where the society was organized to exploit the many for the benefit of the few. Shortly, well, 10 years or so after Garvey's political party came and went, there were the upheavals of 1938, which was a turning point in Jamaica's modern history and led to the formation of the PNP, which is really the direct successor to Garvey's People's Political Party. And the PNP now set about to, as a conscious movement to systematically transform the design of the system. When we look at the formation of the PNP, it is clearly articulated by Norman Manley and others that they wanted to change that system so that the masses would benefit. Now, tourism, which emerged in Jamaica in the last third of the 19th century, of course, was created within this same broad framework, where the main orientation was for the activities of tourism to primarily benefit those who were in control, the relative minority, the owners of the hotels, guest houses, and so on, as such. And the workers there, of course, got a benefit, but they were not in a position to even influence where the profits generated were invested, and they were not invested for the benefit of it. So tourism fell within the same framework. So when it started in the last third of the 18th century, it had what we could call a kind of exclusionary orientation, where the mass of people were not really included. They were excluded from the benefit. They were enabled to get into tourism when it suited those who were in control of the industry. And so we have seen tourism develop in Jamaica initially and for quite a while as a kind of enclave within the economy and even within the society, where there are some people there who got the benefit, some others were there as workers and so on, but the benefits were not spread widely across the society. Now, in our discussions on tourism, I think we can identify three main objectives that guide the recommendations that we make. One is to substantially increase and more equitably distribute the benefits Jamaica derives from tourism. Everyone, of course, is interested in increasing the benefits, but not everyone is interested in equitably distributing the benefits. So we focus on both. Next, to correct the situation where tourism excludes or marginalizes Jamaicans from important national assets. Of course, it marginalizes Jamaicans in general, but specifically the Jamaicans, you know, the Black Jamaicans, the working class Jamaicans, etc., those who are in the less advantageous socioeconomic position. That's the second objective. And thirdly, to eliminate or reduce what we call the asymmetrical relationship between tourists and locals and the resulting social tensions and negative cultural effects that they generate. Because, and those of us who, grew up in tourist areas like myself and maybe others on the North Coast in particular, Sefton, who might not be here, would be familiar that historically there's been a kind of tension. That many Jamaicans have a kind of love-hate relationship with tourism. There's a latent and sometimes open hostility you know, to the tourists, or they are seen as coming and taking away things or taking advantage of our situation. So our recommendations are meant primarily to address these shortcomings as we see them, right? Maximize the benefit from tourism in terms of earning more for the country on a whole, and also to equitably distribute that benefit, to correct a situation where many people get no access to tourism. It is in this enclave, you know, where only certain privileged persons are able to access the benefits. And finally, to create a situation where locals are more comfortable, where there's no inequality in the relationship between the tourists and, you know, the sense of servitude or the sense of not, you know, having access to things that the tourists have access to, and the resulting resentment that we try to address. Now, I suspect, or I hope many of you have read the few paragraphs that express our recommendation, but I've just kind of summarized them into 6. The first one is that the sector to be more fully integrated into the economy and society. Increased linkages with the domestic sector, leading to greater use of local products and services, and making Jamaicans the prime beneficiaries of the industry. We've been talking about that, using locally grown food, selling it to the hotels. That has improved over time, although people like Butch will tell us that the tourism industry quite often doesn't reward the farmers. They don't get the maximum benefit. But the fact is, there has been improvement in that. Use of local tradesmen, use of other local products, you know, condiments, manufactured goods, local labor, in that kind of thing. That's one of the things we are trying to do, so that the economy, more of the tourism dollar will stay in Jamaica rather than go to, you know, you don't import the food, they use a lot of the drinks, etc. The different, you know, things that the equipment and furnishings for the hotel, etc. So we wanted that integration. That's one. Secondly, increase community involvement by putting on activities that are cultural, entertainment, educational, culinary, educational, etc., to which visitors will willingly participate, or in which visitors will willingly participate. The idea of community tourism, which has been going on from the 70s at least, in fits and starts, where just normal communities, not specializing in tourism, but that as part of their broader economic activity, they will be able to incorporate and participate in the tourism pie, so to speak. That tourists will be able to come into a village and you know, go into the bar, go into the pub, or go to the shop, go to some kind of attraction, maybe see a dressmaker or whatever, and you know, that kind of thing, that they're a bit more involved in the general local economy, and so more revenue will be derived, or income for the population. Thirdly, that there be guaranteed effective local access to the beaches, and this is mentioned specifically, and fostering ordinary non-transactional social interaction between tourists and locals. Just to get them to interact in a non-exploitative way. Now, those of us who are familiar with tourism know that we are very familiar with the phenomenon of, you know, these, what we call them, renter dreads and renter studs and those kind of things. Well, yes, that is the way some people get an income. But we want to have, like, people can go into the hotels, Jamaicans, without, you know, and interact with the tourists without even dealing with them, but they can share the facilities. Now, to some extent, this happened in the 70s, prior to the rise of the all-inclusive, but I'm not blaming them for all the ill. But I remember we could go to Ocherias going to Jamaica Grand in whatever iteration it was then. I still had so many different names. You could walk through, you know, go and have a drink, go down to the beach, whatever, without being stopped by security and so on. And as those of us who were active, I remember that we had NEC meetings there, etc. As a matter of fact, the famous NEC meeting where we voted to break with the IMF in the late 70s took place at the Jamaica Grand. Right? So just free access, normal access. That you don't have to go in there to do a business. You might be going in there just to drink, and a tourist will be a part of the, you know, the clientele at the time. That is the time to normalize that kind of interaction. For countering this and or stemming the growing concentration of ownership of the various aspects of the industry and the resulting marginalization of the medium and small stakeholders. And I'll say that specific, I'll elaborate briefly on that, because I know people are not close to it, might not recognize. But what has been happening when the tourism started, the transportation, for example, was provided by a lot of small scale people. People had a car, you know, a taxi, one of those things. I remember my uncle-in-law started with one of those American fishtail cars, and he bought a checker, eventually bought a bus and was part of Juta. And there are many people like that. Some of them who one day we will maybe honor in their memory. For example, Dougie Halsall, who some of us know, his father was also one of the pioneers in the tourism industry. A big car and used to take, you know, tourists at Runaway Bay Hotel, etc. Now, in the 70s, with that opening of opportunities generated by our, and I will call it democratic socialist policy, and we won't go into that debate, but the fact is, it was a, we were operating at a time where there's an element of populism, where there was clearly an effort to incorporate more people in the benefits of the society and the economy. Right? And they formed Juta. That was one of the main organizations that organized the ground transportation. And these are people, some of them had been, you know, artisans in the sugar estates or work somewhere. Some just work maybe in the hotel and they bought a bus, etc. They eventually were the main providers, and we formed other organizations, J. Carl and Maxi and so on, right? Then, of course, at places like Duns River, which is an attraction, there are a lot of people who came in and were selling craft, which originally was native craft, eventually. That changed to some extent. Now, what I'm saying is that the trend of late has been for each hotel now and each tour company, etc., to monopolize everything. So that the Sandals Group, for example, set up island routes, and they have replaced many of the local people. Rather than being bus owners, they now, or transport owners, they now become employees. Right? You find that the gift shops, they now sell a lot of the stuff that that the individual small scale craft vendors, the ones you see in the craft market, etc., which again we set up in the 70s and organized. That little by little, they are being forced out by the superior economies of scale and marketing, etc. And not to mention the payola system that is prevalent in tourism. So what we have seen is that for a large extent, we have been having a situation where local people have been marginalized. Even if they are not excluded, they are able to participate in a less lucrative way. So rather than being a bus owner getting the surpluses, you now have to become an employed bus driver. That's the situation. Not to mention the labor situation in the hotel, which are major exploiters of labor. Many of them people don't realize that their basic salaries are minimum wage. And, you know, for the line staff, this is only by the grace of the gratuity and there are enough guests that they get what is maybe almost a living wage. So those are some of the issues we'll try to stem on. The next one, the fifth, is to eliminate the severe housing accommodation deficit and the consequent spotting that is attached to the main tourism areas. You see it's overwhelmed Montego Bay is around Ocho-Rios, much of the Ocho-Rios part takes place in St. Anne's Bay, and worse still, Spearfish, right? And I'm sure there's some around Negril, etc. Because tourism investment in terms of building accommodation, building attraction, has never been accompanied by a similar or the required level of investment in building accommodation for those who are attracted to the area because they provide labor for the tourism. In the 70s, we tried it in Ocho-Rios, we built Fern Grove, Brook Green, places like that. But even, at least there was a conscious effort, but it was not enough. That's another matter we have to do. And so that, because the spotting situation is very widespread in Jamaica, and it's not accidental that the bulk of spotting takes place in those areas where tourism is a dominant activity, but draws quite a lot. I remember the late Councillor Fulgent, former mayor of St. Anne's Bay, used to call Ocho-Rios Bird Cherry Island because of how many outsiders it attracted, many of whom stayed to try and get a piece of the pie or some of the cherries. And sixthly and finally, operating the tourism sector in a way that fosters Jamaicans' appreciation of their culture and natural environment. That, in other words, and I think Comrade Burke has been very strong on this, but he's not the only one, any others, that all the features of Jamaica, the falls, the mountains, the gardens, Jamaicans should have access to them and be encouraged, and their appreciation of this be fostered. That we should be developing our environment, developing our beauty, not just for tourists, but for everybody, right? In other words, we start with ourselves, and the tourists come and enjoy what it is that we have created for ourselves, which is what has happened in many older societies, but in our society, quite often the attractions are developed. And even when they were pre-existing, once tourism comes into the picture, eventually the local people are largely excluded. They are priced out of the market, etc. They're priced out. They're not, you see it with the beaches, you see it with Sons River, where over the years, I don't know what exactly what's happening now, but we had to fight to maintain a two-tier thing that neoliberal economics tells us isn't right. But we had a price for locals and a price for foreigners, right? So that we could keep allow locals to have access. We try not to price them out of the beaches, etc. But that is something I'm saying, that our focus should be on developing Jamaica primarily for the benefit of Jamaica. And then what we have developed for ourselves is attractive, is beautiful, full of entertainment and fun. We open it and know that many people will come, just like they come to enjoy our music, and they come to enjoy the cuisine, etc. That is the orientation that we have. Comrades, that's basically what it is, what we are proposing in a nutshell. Thank you, comrades.
Thank you, James.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Comrade Walsh. And before we open the forum for general discussion, I see that there are certain special people that we're going to ask for responses from. And the first on my list is Janice Allen, Shadow Minister for Tourism. Is Janice with us?
Okay, I should have looked up. Hold on a minute, 1 minute. I'm gonna go to it. You have time? You're gonna order those things.
Is Janice Allen waiting?
No, she's not here.
Janice is not here?
No.
No, okay, well then we'll move on to those of the regional chairmen who are present. Starting with Region 1. Anybody from Region 1? No, anybody from Region 2? Region 3, anyone from Region 3? Region 4, anyone from Region 4? Region 5, do we have a representative from Region 5? Region 6, do we have a Region 6 representative? If not, we'll move on to see if we can get some responses from the party's arms and affiliates, starting with the union. Do we have a union voice? Youth organization. Do we have a YO representative to give a perspective on this subject? Women's movement. Anyone from the women's movement? I think there's and they what next? The Patriots? Okay. Well, in that case, I would just like to open the discussion to anyone who wants to respond to James's presentation or any other general comment on the proposals that we put forward or on the tourism industry in Jamaica generally.
Okay, could I just say thank you, James. That was a really very in-depth and profound presentation. And particularly one of the points that you have mentioned in terms of using the local foods and products of Jamaica. It is something I was looking at in another area of ways that we can in terms of assisting or helping in supporting local farmers and local producers in Jamaica. Because the more, even though some of that has been happening, the more we really do in terms of engaging our local farmers and producers with their products in the tourist industry, it is the more encouragement we get for more farmers to go in to do that sort of production. So I was happy to see that you really did push forward that area. And that is something I'm behind you with. Jamaica has a lot that we are producing and can attribute to certain industries, the tourist industry in particular, because that's what we are discussing here. And there is so much our local farmers can contribute. And if the tourism industry encourages the farmers to push forward their produce, it is the more they will produce and it is the more they will become engaged. So I'm really appreciative of that. And I do hope the government and the PNP, when they get back in power, will really push forward on this agenda.
Thank you, George.
Good afternoon.
Yeah, Butch, Butch.
Yes, I'm not sure what's happening. I have any issues with communication. Are you hearing me?
Yes,
I'm hearing you.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
all right. So James, I noticed you excluded the South Coast. At least I didn't hear it. But anyway, maybe I was distracted elsewhere. However.
Yes, again, Butch, I didn't hear.
I didn't. I was
South
general.
Coast.
I didn't really speak.
Okay, so the South Coast has been neglected. We have so many great spots, starting from Port Royal, all the way to Hellshire and Milk River Bath and in between, went right back to St. Elizabeth. And if you look at how we have approached it, the major infrastructure, road network, communication, and so on, has primarily been on the North Coast side. And I mean, and so therefore I'm saying that we need to broaden our penetration while we seek to extract more locally from the industry. I can tell you, someone mentioned about food and so on. There is a grand conspiracy in the tourism industry where they do bulk purchases overseas and claim it's cheaper. So a lot of the money flew out because all of them bought by with operations based in Miami or elsewhere. And so therefore they can do the internal transfer of the money. And so the amount retained, the net to Jamaica, we need to verify precisely what, apart from the wages and the utilities and so on, what is left here. I know, for example, that farmers who supply goods to the hotel have a hell of a time to get paid. And you wait so long. In fact, at one time they set up a buying entity controlled by, I believe, a JLP person. And so they did the bulk purchase. And so you have to go through them, otherwise you can't get into the market. So there are a lot of things that needs to be done to democratize the whole process for Jamaicans to benefit. And the other thing is the issue of the workers' housing and related things. It's a disgrace, frankly, that so many billions sit in the National Housing Trust. Right? And we find a way to, I mean, we had a program for some workers' benefits and so on. But I can't recall whether or not the housing was as strong, but certainly, I mean, the problem both for crime and the poor living conditions in the major tourism areas. I mean, part of it is really because they live in squalor. I mean, how could you take a man coming out of a terrible one-room situation to go cater to a multimillionaire with all the luxury in the hotel and so on, to manicure lawns and to massage these people and then to return home to their hovel? I mean, people don't see the disconnect and how the thing is really poised for some kind of real, social unrest. So we have as a party to step up the issue of how are we going to deal with the social welfare of our workers in Jamaica, and in particular, the tourism workers. And the other point I want to make, James, I really see where they are gone. Many of them have gone out, taking over the ground transport, which used to be a linkage. They have gone away with the craft because a lot of the crafts are in store now. They fence out our way in such a way that we don't have access to the beaches. Right? Yeah. And I've seen many times when persons find an empty lot and to try and sell their little craft things on the side. And some managers are tolerant, some are not. So some might get a little sale and some are just like you're eking out and really deal with skullduggery, and you have to really try to find a way. So the whole structure of it is, I think it is bad because you can't be cockeyed and look one way. We definitely have to have a policy where a certain percent of the earnings are retained in Jamaica. Because when you look, if the bookings are done overseas, the purchase of everything is done overseas. Then you realize, no, it is an enclave situation where we just provide the location, and the rest of it, no, we get whatever comes fall from the table. So there are quite a bit of things that a PNP administration coming in would have to look at to address these inequities. Thank you.
Thank you, Butch. Who is next? Anyone else wishing to comment?
Leroy, to follow up on what Butch said, some of the hotels, some years up to recently, I mean, I was saying this based on that, we interact with a lot of people. They run a conscious policy that what they try to do is the only money that they bring to Jamaica is the local operating costs, which they of course try to minimize, right? So that, because they're using contract labor, casual labor, all kind of things like that. And essentially the inflow to the Jamaica is maybe the 30% or 25% that deals with the immediate costs, the local electricity, the water and labor. That is what they do. So that yes, the amount we earn from foreign exchange, the gross amount, only about between 35 and 40 at the best time, 45% of that is retained. But generally it's really less than that. And some of what is retained is only appears to be retained because it then leaks out with other imports that are not direct. I'm sorry also though that we don't have a union rep here, because one of the areas of concern and tension has been unionization. In the 70s, to some extent the 60s and certainly the 70s, the major hotels were unionized. I remember Jamaica Grand was unionized. Hilton was unionized, right? Not sure about the Kingston ones. They were unionized. And some good comrades were there as union delegates, etc., etc. Now, the unions are struggling day after day, year after year, and they just can't get in because the hotel have their little spy system where as soon as somebody tries to organize, they get rid of the person. I remember now they largely dealing with contract workers, so they don't renew their contract. It is one of the main areas of exploitation of labor in Jamaica, and it has not been addressed as such. It is not even being addressed publicly. Nobody is making noise about it. It doesn't interest the media, right? It doesn't interest the media. It doesn't interest the government. And it interests us, but we haven't been focused on those things.
Okay, thanks, James. I see Norris has his hand up. Norris, please come in.
All right. Yeah, thank you very much, Leroy. And I missed the early part of James' presentation, but I apologize for that. And I'm not sure if he had dealt in depth with the issue of ecotourism. There's amongst the young middle class of the world now, there's rising environmental consciousness. And, countries like Jamaica, we have relied on the traditional forms of tourism. And what COVID-19 has done, COVID-19 has demonstrated that if you have a global crisis like a pandemic and so on, your entire economic system can be shut down. So the need to move away from the traditional forms of tourism, the new forms is something which is very important. And I think it would fit within the context of Seboy, if the People's National Party is going to say it's going to be transformative, it must also be moving away from traditional forms of economy, traditional ways of doing things, towards new method, which brings in more people. It brings in the rural people. Because once you move into things like ecotourism, you're talking like tours into Blue Mountains, you're talking about whether in Drunk Mountains, other areas like that, and so on. So, and I joined with Butch with his proposal, which the points he made. But how do you incorporate the vast majority of the people, the working classes, the farmers, in a way that they are contributing to the development of the national economy, and they're also getting income and return, which force a situation where now in terms of capital spending, investment spending now you have to shift some of your dollars to rural areas. Because for example, the people live in Blue Mountain, and those areas leading to Blue Mountain, for example, you'd have to be developing the roads, infrastructure, St. Mary, Portland, all those areas we have, very nice hills, and so I'm saying that the way things are seen are the way things used to be done. the methodology has to change, and that would become a central part of your transformative economics. So the transformative economics or political economy, or whatever you want to call it, must be going in such a way that it is touching the life of all people. So even if you don't have global spending coming from central government, because the nature of economic activity is changing, right? Money is now being coming and developing in the local economy. So the people of Craft, for example, you know, they have been tourists coming from overseas, coming up in there. They can have their shop set up on the side of the road, and you know, people can see the handicraft products and so on, you know, which is create the synergy of income develop, income coming, income flowing. That's just a general point. I don't know if you see that, or if you had dealt with it, or, you know, if you see that as a way of also transforming the economy and making it more democratic and independent.
Yeah, Norris, I'd mentioned something about local economic development, which I didn't elaborate on because I thought, well, I just assumed some people knew about it. But what we did through the Social Development Commission, in fact, we got some funding. We got 20 million Canadian dollars from I spearheaded the drive. We raised $20 million Canadian, but it was for the Caribbean to do community type economic projects on the line of Jamaica welfare that Norman Manley had projected earlier. And we saw significant local returns.
Yes.
So we have tourism in all parts of rural Jamaica, including here in St. Thomas. In fact, we have even today, sometimes we have fairs put on by the SDC where these people present their products, whether it's bee or products from the bees or craft products, right? And also in the tourism area. So what we're targeting is to do it now from bottom up, to get now the council, the municipal corporations, right, to help to drive the community type economic development. And of course, the tourism linkages would have been an integral part of it. And we had, in fact, when Dr. Clark was asking if we have an agricultural department in the local government, but we're working closely with the tourism sector to create this kind of cottage type industry. So if you, for example, had a little facility you could put on another room and create a bed and breakfast for people going to Milk River Bath, for example, or somewhere in the Blue Mountain or anywhere in St. Thomas, that we would give you virtually grant funds, make grant funds available at that level to help you. So once you have a business idea or a plan or a small business ongoing, the SDC would identify, go in and intervene, train, create the capacity, right? Upgrade the facility, right? And you see places like Ochi, other places like that are doing cooking, you go in, you have to streamline their process. A small factory, you have to streamline their operation and so on. So it's a question to pull that blueprint up, right? And sell it and get the buy-in from the political directorate, because I tell you, you know, it is sometimes people want to see a great big hotel and don't realize that many small facilities can create the social stability and feed into that network, right? So, you know, it is there. I mean, James would have been there as the chairman of the SDC, would be familiar with some of those things, which James probably can pull it forward and circulate some of the documents amongst the comrades so they could see what is the potential. But I can tell you, we had actually created millions of dollars in terms of additional wealth creation in the economy. We never sell it, we never PR it, and that is probably one of the big problems that the PNP have. We have great ideas and plans and projects, but we are weak, so weak on PR is unbelievable. And so therefore, you know, many times the JP just grab an idea, change the name, and move it, and you think it's their project. But so we did quite a bit, and it was really inspired by the Norman Manley concept of social welfare, where we can identify a niche market. You are here, you produce coconut. Let us see how we can help you to produce not only coconut water, but products from the coconut using the shell, the husk, the trunk of the dead tree, whatever it is, to build an industry around a local area that has some competitive or comparative advantage. All right, so that's a little tip of it.
Thank you very much for the clarification, Bush. Thank you very much. And thanks, James. Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Butch. Who is next?
Could I come in? This is Kate
Please,
here.
please do, Kate.
Yes. First of all, I'd like to thank Comrade James for that presentation. Very good indeed. And there are a lot of the points that he raised that I really agree with, and also the comments from Comrade Butch and Norris and others. I don't know how many of you know this, but my very first job in Jamaica when I was 18 years old was in tourism. I actually worked in the sector as Jamaica's first trilingual tour guide, American Express hostess, and I used to work with Martin's Jamaica. And I got to know the island from top to bottom, all the hotel areas thoroughly, all the hotels, everything. And I saw how the whole tourism sector worked in those days. And then obviously over the years with my various activities, I've always been involved in one way or another with the tourism sector, or at least visiting. um, there's some points I want to make. First of all, um, I was absolutely heartbroken when, after a few years away, I came back and found that the beaches were no longer accessible to Jamaicans in general. I was embarrassed actually because I was accompanying a group from Europe, and I had been telling them about, all the beauties of the beaches. Everybody abroad knows about how beautiful Jamaican beaches are, but we weren't staying in any particular hotel. So I said we'd go to Ocharias and we'd go to wherever, and I was taking them on a tour around the island, and I was embarrassed to see that we couldn't have access to the beaches if unless we were staying in specific hotels, or that we had to pay quite a bit of money to access some of them. And it's been one of the things that has disturbed me till now. So I'm really glad that this was mentioned, because it is our country, it is our land, and the beaches. I mean, I understand why some of the hotels and businesses have privatized, or why there's I don't know, how this all came about with the government, etc. But then in my travels around the world, and God knows I travel all over the world, I've been to places like Kenya, Tanzania, um, Seychelles Islands, beautiful pearls in the Indian Ocean, and so on, where the beaches are open to the public, open completely. So the public, you can have access to the beach. You can't actually go into the hotels from the beach. Yes, there's a limit, unless you're staying there or you have business there. But the beaches are free and open. And so that is one thing I'd really like to see us work on in Jamaica, to restore our beaches, restore them for public access as well. Obviously, maybe there has to be some structures to make sure the beaches are kept clean, that there is order, etc., etc. But we need to get back our beaches. But that touches on something else that I don't think anybody has mentioned, and it is the environmental aspect of tourism in Jamaica. And I'm not talking about
Not hearing
ecotourism,
Katie.
the environmental aspect of tourism in Jamaica is something that I didn't hear anyone touch on this evening. Ecotourism is one thing, yes, and that is something that definitely needs to be pursued. We have a wealth of opportunities in Jamaica to further develop ecotourism. I appreciate what Comrade Butch was saying, but also I agree that one of our biggest weaknesses is lack of PR, lack of the proper advertising for certain of the projects that could really generate interest and income. The entire world knows Jamaica. Everywhere I go, I hear Bob Marley music. In the middle of where was it? I was Kuala Lumpur. The first thing I see is a huge poster of Usain Bolt. Everybody in the world knows Jamaica and knows that Jamaica is a beautiful country, but people don't know what it is we really have to offer, other than they see the pictures of the all-inclusives and the beaches that go with the hotels. We have so much more to offer. We all know that. And I was listening carefully to the talk about Comrade Butch was talking about the development projects, and Norris was talking about ecotourism. Fantastic. But people outside who are interested in this kind of tourism don't really know widespread that this exists. Most people only hear, at least in Europe where I live, most people only hear about the package deals to all inclusives. And unless they're a little bit more adventurous, they don't go beyond that. Now, I have a lot of friends and colleagues who want to visit Jamaica and who want to get to know the real Jamaica, want to get to know Jamaicans. I mean, real Jamaicans, not just this sort of plastic fairy tale that people go, experience in the all-ins. So we have a lot of work to do. Now, the environmental issues, why I mentioned that, is if we are to continue to promote tourism in Jamaica and to protect the beauty of our island in general and our beaches in particular, we really need to wake up and to become much more focused on developing projects that will help to protect the environment in our country. The beaches are being eroded. Look at Hellshire. I mean, it is disappearing. Look at the Sargassum. Look at the coral reefs that are being destroyed and have been for decades. And so the fish are, going to other pastures, if I can put it that way. I don't know what has been done in detail, but I think what is missing is really integrated projects that will help to tackle these issues, to ensure the maintenance of our environment and this will feed into the sustainability of our tourism offer in Jamaica as well. But it will maintain the environment for all Jamaicans. Something else that hasn't been mentioned, I'm sorry if I'm taking up a little time, but this is something that's very dear to my heart. Something else that hasn't been mentioned is the fact that tourism to a great extent comes not only from those foreigners, but from Jamaicans and the Jamaican descendants, Jamaicans living abroad, who come home and sometimes, and this is my case also, you will go and see your family and you'll go and visit and you'll stay with them, but you want to have a little time at the beach as well. And you will sometimes book sometimes an all-inclusive, sometimes an Airbnb or a guest house or whatever to go and enjoy. And I find that it's like that. Sometimes I feel like not enough is done also to welcome home Jamaicans from overseas. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying. On a visit, not to say that, not to welcome home to live, but Jamaicans who are visiting on holiday. Anyway, I can go into lots of details. One thing I would say too, though, is I haven't heard of any mention of racism in the, oh, sorry, Paul, but I'm speaking. Can the others hear me? Can you all hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. So I think Paul is having a problem with his sound input. Something else that I haven't heard mentioned is the whole issue, which I find very, very, very disturbing, of racist attitudes towards local staff in some of the foreign hotels, all-inclusives, etc. I'm not going to mention any specific names or hotels, etc. But I have stayed in quite a few. And I'm the type of person I like to talk to people. And I go and I will meet the Jamaican staff in the hotels and I will talk and I will see how things are. And it's important. It's a pity that the unions are not here represented because there is a serious problem. I'm not saying in all of the hotels, but there is a serious problem. I don't know if it is characteristic of the industry as a whole in Jamaica, but there is a serious problem because I've been told point blank, a lot of the owners and they will send managerial staff from Spain or from wherever, from abroad. And it's very seldom that local Jamaicans get to rise through the ranks. That's one. And two, the local staff.
Somebody
Noise.
need to mute.
Yeah. The local staff.
I want to hear you. I just can't get any sound.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Are you recording the meeting?
Yes, but I'm
Okay.
hearing my phone.
Because others could hear me. So yeah, what I was going to say is the level of pay for local staff, the way in which local staff are treated is a major, major source of concern, in my opinion. Some hotels may be better than others, but it is a major source of concern. So I think there needs to be an integrated approach, as I said, to dealing with tourism and looking at all of these issues and finding ways. I am not a businesswoman. I wish I were. I wish I knew how to, had a business mind as well. But I think what I'm really, really interested in social justice and making sure that everyone involved in the tourism industry is able to have a fair share, a fair role to play, and is treated with dignity and respect. Now, linked in with all of this, yeah, racism is an issue. It is. I've seen it, yes. Linked in with all of this, though, may I add also that one thing we've done over the decades in Jamaica, which has been very good, is training of staff for the hotel industry. But I think there again, there are areas of training that could be very useful. This is an important issue also because I'm thinking now of the craftspeople and vendors, because on many visits, I have again been embarrassed by the way in which not only me, but visitors who are with me have been approached. And I think this is a whole area that needs to be looked at as well. Not just the hotel staff, but the ancillary services and others involved in tourism. Some sort of systematic training needs to be introduced into how to deal with people, who are visiting, so as not to drive people away. Because a lot of people also, unfortunately, unless they're there for the specific purposes, which I won't repeat, mentioned earlier by Comrade James, a lot of people who don't have those.
I missed that part.
He can
Okay.
repeat it. He can repeat. But unless people come for those purposes, people come to relax and enjoy themselves, etc. And unfortunately, because of perhaps the poverty as that you were mentioning, the differences in social status, income, etc., some people are really too aggressive in their approach to the visitors. And that's something I feel that needs to be addressed as well. I have a whole long list. I'll stop there just to say that there is a lot of work that needs to be done to enhance tourism in Jamaica and to really advertise and put Jamaica out there again in the world. Because I can tell you, many people I know in Europe are now afraid to go to Jamaica. That's another point. Safety and security are afraid to go to Jamaica because of the news they hear. So that's why they book the all-ins instead of going into local communities and eco-tourism projects. They are afraid. So there's a whole number of issues that need to be looked at and interrelated in an integrated approach. Thank you for allowing me to speak for so long.
Okay, Kid, if I say some just two clarification. One, the issue of the beaches. All of the beaches in Jamaica are government owned. Right? So what the hotel owners have cleverly done is to fence their section so you don't have access. Right? So that's where the trickery comes in. Well, once you can get on the beach, all beach is publicly owned. The other thing is we have been suffering now and getting worse by the year of the sea level rise, which is one of these affecting the Hillshaft section and all the way down to St. Elizabeth, Ocean, and so on. You can see clear evidence of sea level rise and beach erosion. And so that's a bigger international issue that we have articulated, yes, but we have to give commendation to Maya Mottley, Prime Minister of Barbados.
Absolutely.
For championing the cause so beautifully.
Yes.
For the rest of us.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Before I invite you in the next response or contribution, I'd like to take the opportunity myself to comment on a couple of things. Kit and myself share a couple of things, not just our interest in language apparently, but one of the first jobs I applied for when I was leaving high school was to work with Martins. My application was very favorably received, but when I went for an interview with Mr. Emile Martin in Montego Bay. He didn't give me the job. Finally, he said, because after speaking for about half an hour, not once did I call him sir. And that's why I didn't get the job. Anyway, that's not neither here nor there.
It
Secondly,
is.
though, I am as heartbroken as Kate. And in fact, this is my number one problem, my number one concern, that of the access to the beaches in Jamaica by Jamaicans. I have been to France on the Côte d'Azur, one of the most famous tourism areas, Cannes and Nice and so on. And no hotel is built on the beach. Between the hotel and the beach, there is a road, so everybody can have access to the beach. It's not just the Seychelles, but also in Jamaica, in Grenada and Antigua, two of the countries that I have visited. Antigua claims to have 365 beaches. All the beaches are fully accessible to the public.
Yep.
Right, so I don't understand what is the problem. Butch has reminded us of the legal situation which Norman Manley brought about in 1955, which is that the beach, if you can travel via sea, then you can get onto the beach because the high water mark really is public property. But there is a practical inconvenience, and this is what we're proposing, that the government should address the practical inconvenience and therefore build an easement, a passageway, whatever you want to call it, between hotels so that local Jamaicans can get to the beaches. Or if they cannot, if that is inconvenient, then allow the people to walk through the hotel property. Anyway, before I come in back, next contribution, next comment.
I agree with you, Leroy and Kate, that an easement needs to be built because legally the government owns the beaches. So therefore, the public should have access. So that is something we really have to push towards, an easement, because if the hotels are fencing off their property, then they can't fence off the leadway to the beaches. This has to be addressed.
You see, they have the property already. You understand the
But the
complication.
government need to deal with them and say, you have to change what you do.
So, you start. Well, I've tried to redo it. I mean, in fact, I had some meetings with a few persons. I tell you this: one hotel wanted to do some buildings, which required permission from cabinet, and Portia was adamant about the same argument. How are people going to access the beach? And we had to give her a map of the Montego Bay area to show the public beaches, right? But the issue of access became a problem for some areas because, these people own the property already. You couldn't very well, unless you're going to purchase it from them or use some kind of legal thing. So it was a very sticky issue with the investment and all that kind of thing. But it is something that one of the things that the hoteliers were raising was the issue of how you control. I mean, persons literally push drugs and litter the beaches, right? And how you guarantee the security and safety of their guests. So it was a really, it's an issue that, that's a big issue that we need to debate in Jamaica. And somehow it links back to the security and safety issue. And so, this is why I think we are where we are with this matter here.
Okay.
What's you, Leroy?
I have a few comments I would like to make. So whoever wishes to come in next, I'd like to pause a minute and let me make a few comments of my own. I agree with whoever said, I think it might have been Norris, that the present model of tourism is outmoded. Certainly in recent years, it has become more and more outmoded. I would like to just bring focus or attention on the fact that over in recent years, the parishes with the highest poverty rates in Jamaica have been those parishes that have abundant tourism. I would like to focus our attention on the fact that the parish with the highest crime rate is our #1 tourism parish. And I think that there must be a link between both. To my mind, the display of luxury in these areas leads to a public perception and mentality of wanting to gain access to wealth without effort. As we see in the lottery scam, lottery scamming activities have taken over in St. James and the associated gang violence. And I think that one of the problems with tourism, because of its attractiveness, is that it leads to a disregard for other industries and act as a magnet for workers, would-be workers, leading to widespread squatting in these tourism areas, like in Negril, around Oterius, Pimento Walk, and Paritown, which are areas in which I was active in Viv Blake's by-election in 1975, beautiful middle-class areas. Last time I went down there, they were overrun by slums created by outsiders coming in. So definitely we need a new model of tourism, which doesn't lock up tourists, doesn't lock up tourists in resorts. And I think we need to change our language, talking about resorts, for example. We need a new tourism which doesn't lock out Jamaicans. A tourism which promotes Jamaica's people rather than our beaches. We need to expose more aspects of Jamaica's geography and life. We need more face-to-face encounters between tourists and Jamaicans in non-commercial settings, not in the exploitative settings as the rent-a-dread and so on, which James reminded us. Really kinder, gentler interchanges between foreigners and locals. We need to promote different kinds of tourism. We have mentioned the environmental tourism, which I think Norris is pushing, but also historical tourism. There are people, foreigners, who are interested in learning about the Tainos, in learning about the Spanish period in Jamaica, in learning more about the Buccaneers, about slavery and emancipation. Certainly, there is a lot of opportunity unexploited for mountain tourism, certainly hiking along trails like in the east, for example, where you could go up past Comfort Castle and down to Kuna Gap, down to Bath in St. Thomas. The foreigners love hiking, especially Germans, I know. Hardly love anything more than hiking, and that is something we could definitely promote. Country tourism, including visiting people's farms and so on, which is done on a limited basis now. Religious tourism, the history of the Moravians in Jamaica, those beautiful hillside churches at places like like Springfield in St. Elizabeth. Even the synagogues. A lot of people don't realize that Jamaica is one of the oldest countries to have no discrimination against Jews. That when the British came to Jamaica, the Jews preferred to stay in Jamaica. And there never was any discrimination, has been any discrimination against Jews in Jamaica. Sports tourism, obviously, but new types of things, car racing, tennis, boxing, all of those kinds of things. Amusement parks where foreigners and Jamaicans can meet. You know, well, one can use your imagination and go further in this way. I also think that if we're thinking about this new kind of tourism, and like Bush is talking about, community-based tourism, we need more collaboration between the minister and the Ministry of Tourism and the municipalities, between the Ministry of Tourism and the SDC with the Ministry of Agriculture and so on. Tourism is too compartmentalized, not only geographically, but also within our government. And with that, I will.
Oh,
I will
Leroy.
Yes.
Leroy, you leave out a key one: entertainment, music, sports. I mean, can you believe that the reggae capital of the world, the reggae capital of the world is in France? Eh? How can it be? Right?
Yeah,
I mean,
sure.
it is ridiculous. You know what I mean?
It's closer than when it was in Japan.
No, it's true. It's true. Let me tell you, the reggae capital of the world is in France and in Belgium and in Germany too, but not in Jamaica. But all the same, yeah, all the same people, there's a whole segment of people who like to go to Jamaica because of the music and entertainment.
Yes,
and, you know, so that needs to be developed. But could I just say in response, was it Comrade Leroy was speaking, about, I don't know if any of you remember back in the 70s, there was a program called, I think run by the Jamaica Tourist Board, called Meet the People, which used to welcome passengers off cruise ships. I don't know why that program stopped, but it was, when it was running, it was one of the more successful programs because the people really, really enjoyed coming into homes, people's homes. Generally speaking, it was middle class homes in Kingston and St. Andrew and Montego Bay or wherever. But passengers off the ships would go and spend a day with a Jamaican family and just live with the family for a day. And the family would take them out and cook and give them food, Jamaican food and whatnot. And my family was a part of the program. And it was really, really interesting because you met a lot of interesting people as well. And the families in those days, some of the families were, you could say, compensated, not paid. The families weren't paid locally, but each family was invited in turn on one of the cruise ships as well to interact with all the passengers and, you know, put on a show or do something cultural or cooking demo or whatever. Okay, I'm not saying that is an idea. It fizzled out, but I think it was a fantastic idea, but it needs to be expanded and incorporating the community-based tourism, which I think is a brilliant idea, but involving families, individuals, you know, more directly interacting and with the visitors. And one other thing I wanted to say about the different forms of tourism that we need to develop and promote, it's not just for foreigners. I keep saying, don't forget second and third generation Jamaicans and their families who live abroad, who don't know that much about Jamaica and want to come back and visit. So there's a whole broader audience to be tapped into, you know, but these are programs that really we need to look at developing.
Kate, I remember the what do you call it? That program quite
Meet
well.
the people. Meet the people.
Program.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, I think, remember it was heavily associated with the 70s and maybe it got painted. With one of, although people, it was not a partisan program. I remember Patsy Pink, former JLP MP, but she wasn't a politician at the time, was very instrumental in St. Anne. You know, it was a non-partisan program, but a number of the babies of the 70s were thrown out with the bathwater
Yeah.
after that, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is that. But and of course the other thing, it was overtaken by the monopolization of the growing monopoly. Because
All
remember,
inclusives.
of the whole process with the ships and so on. Right now, there is a struggle because what happens is that ships try to maximize revenue. If you go to Falmouth, for example, Royal Caribbean has a part. A person can come to Jamaica and don't come out of the pier, the harbor complex essentially.
Yeah.
Because that is how they operate. They control everything. They
Yeah.
try to market everything. And not for security, to make money. The ships like nothing that they're not making money on. So there are some economic forces in operation. And we, in dealing with these problems, that's one of the things we now have to be alert to the fact that there are economic forces driving many of these trends, and we now have to find a way to navigate them and to channel them, right, into that. Because people have tried. I know, for example, that the chocolate co people, when they started out, one of the ideas that Danny Melville had was that people would come and they would send them out into the villages to do to ride or by dune buggy, whatever it is. And you would go to an area and they would identify in each little community, for example, a bar. And they would, if necessary, fund the operator of that bar, to upgrade it so that it would be at a certain quality that would be acceptable to the people who are coming onto the ship. And that's an initiative that hasn't really been pursued because increasingly the center of gravity, the locus of power, has been shifting to the marketing people in the shipping industry, the tour directors, I think they call them, right? And anything that they are not making money from, they fight against. So these are some of the issues we have to tackle on a serious basis.
Yeah, James, I think Danny Melville, at least until recently, also had a program where he had these open air jeeps that took tourists up into the countryside around like Beachertown and Epworth and areas like that. I don't know if he still has it.
They still have it. They have, but even that has to be kind of more structured and formalized now. And the idea that he had, which, now that the thing has been driven not just by them, but by their clients, the ships, has kind of just fallen by the wayside. Because I remember when you started out, you would go to Beachertown, Parrytown, Chester, wherever you have this thing, and you would empower one or two business people, shopkeeper, you'd have a stop. And just to make sure the quality control, you help them. Not necessarily a loan, maybe a grant, to just fix up the thing, buy a good refrigerator, deep freeze, paint up the place, buy some nice seats, etc. And so the income would percolate more into the community. But the ship owners and the hotel operators and the tour operators, of course, their main interest is in the income percolated into their own coffers. So these are things we have to look at. I mean, we can't tackle them naively. We have to tackle them with wisdom.
Perhaps, James, one of the approaches could be for the government, the tourism, what you call it, tourist board, to form a subsidiary of itself as a tour operator, set up a tour operation under its thing, which really, attempts to break away or provide an alternative to these others. But there's a point which Kate mentioned, but which I think is easy to overlook and I think should be emphasized. At least he didn't say it, but the implication I got from what he was saying is that our own Jamaican press is frightening away our visitors.
Man.
The way the headline news in the newspapers and on TV and whatever is always about crime and violence. That which and we have crime and violence in every other country, but nowhere else do they take so much pleasure in highlighting it.
Correct.
Yeah, I remember in the so I've somebody a friend or associate of mine who was involved with tourism here to some extent and in construction, and he went and did a project in the Bahamas, and he said while he was working on this construction project, I think about between 3 to 5 people were killed, by violence, and it never appeared in the press. And he asked them, he said, I mean, how is it that we don't see these things in the press? He said, why would we put this in the press? That is not anybody's business. It's our, and that is only going to hurt us, not help us. But we don't have that attitude. Remember that our media is formed, it's coming from the 70s, when the idea was to promote the negatives to undermine the government. And I'm afraid they have not really fully escaped that orientation yet.
Think of the most strife-torn countries you can find, or the most anti-American countries that you can find: North Korea, Iran. There are always American tourists there. So there are some people who will come nevertheless. But we just seem that it is our mission of our press to highlight the negative, as you said, James, highlight the negatives. And the Gleaner in particular has become more and more follow the example of the stars, now become just a shadow of the star and so on. Where before it was a relatively respectable newspaper, even if it was anti-PNP. It's now just seeking out the most lurid stories for its front page.
Although, bear in mind though that our level of murders and so is phenomenal. I mean, as somebody said long ago in the tourism industry, the fact that so many tourists come to Jamaica, 3 million on average in recent years or more, is a testimony to the strength of the brand. Very few other countries with this level of violence and so, and with the exposure that is given by our media, would have been able to survive as a tourism destination. But we also have to realize that our murder rate is way up there. And our states of emergency, if we look at the thing in an objective way, have had the major impact of spreading the murder throughout the country. When they started with the first 3 or so states of emergency, you had the geographically, the main murder areas were about 3. There were parts of the corporate area, St. James were the main ones, right? And parts of St. Catherine. Now they're about 7 or 8. Every time you have a state of emergency, people move. So Hanover, when you have 3 murders in Hanover, it's a big thing, as if it's a disaster. Westmoreland, those were in Westmoreland, every now and then some people would get vexed and chop up each other, some sugar workers, 3 of them for the 2 years. But no, those are some of the main, that's the epicenter. And I think it is a direct consequence of the application of the states of emergency.
If I can just jump in. Oh, I was just going to say that I hadn't thought of it in those terms, and that is an interesting reflection. But whatever is the actual cause of what is happening, it is, even though Jamaica's tourism brand is still extremely strong worldwide, and we're able to attract millions of tourists still, it's the image, the brand is being undermined by the reports on all of these issues. And yes, the media in Jamaica has a large part has to be blamed to a large extent. But there's one other element in all of this that we're forgetting, and it's social media. Because unfortunately, now a lot of these incidents and stories are being reported on social media, not by the mainstream media, but by individuals as well. So it's a matter of also, that's why I say we need a fully integrated approach, because unless I know that tackling the crime and violence in Jamaica is massive, it's a major, major thing, but we have to continue dealing with it, but also looking at the effects on tourism of this level of crime and violence. I heard what Comrade Leroy was saying about people going to places like North Korea and so on, Iran. Yes, there will always be tourists there, those who have particular interests in going to certain countries, but they don't rely on tourism to the same extent that we do. And, you know, the type level of tourism is quite different. So we have to really, really try to find ways in which to bring the different ministries and forces together to tackle all of these things, to protect something that is very valuable to us and that we have to continue developing and promoting. I don't know. I think this needs a think tank, a serious think tank, not just within the PNP, but all sectors involved, you know, to really, really see what are the best plans that can be put in place to tackle all of these issues almost in parallel. Obviously, some are more pressing. The safety and security and crime and violence is something that, boy, is bad. It's bad. But you know, to try to tackle all of this sort of in parallel or in structured way, so that Jamaica doesn't end up losing out completely in the long run. I mean, there's also COVID as well. We have mentioned COVID. That is, I'm sure, having an impact. And the COVID pandemic is not under control yet. It's getting bad in the rest of the world again. So, oh, I'm hearing echoes. Anyway, just to cut it short, to say that was an interesting reflection, though, Comrade James. Yeah.
Thank
Yeah.
you. Thank you,
Um,
Kid. Anybody
because-
else wants to come in before we close
Just-
off?
Just a quick comment.
All right.
Yes,
so-
Norris.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're right back to the key question, the development model. And the issue of the IMF, the past 50 years in terms of say, where dollars, where the poor people are cut out of the process of economic development. Because the nature of crime and violence and the state of emergency, all this must be seen in the context of the bad backward development model, which is more and more leading to social alienation, extremities of mentality into our people and so on. So this is something, as bad as it is, it cannot be, it has a PNP government coming back into power. Has to examine the question of, after 50 years, are you going to follow a model which nowhere in the world it has worked? The IMF have not worked in no other country in the world. So the question of addressing how to deal with the question of, say, boy, postponing repayment, whatever, how it must be approached. Sit down with the IMF and negotiate and say, listen to me, this interest, we are borrowing money to pay you back. What we want to do is start paying for 5 or 10 years and then use that money to plow into the communities or so on, to address social problems, address education. And when you address things like that, that is a fundamental way eventually going to deal with, you know, you're going to have some people who are just reprobates, lumping, who can't change. You know, Cuba faced that situation when they came after the revolution, and Fidel gave some of them a choice and they refused to change and they had to lock up some of them, right? But the bottom line is this, just to wrap up. The question of how to raise money, it can be raised in terms of the continent to borrow money to pay back the IMF. It has to be a fundamental, it addressing a very fundamental philosophical and political economic approach. A new government, the PNP government, is willing to say, hey guys, it's in your interest if our economy develop. We don't want to borrow money from you. We just want to use the money we are giving you for the next 5 years or 10 years to address our social problems. And that, I think, will go to the question of easing the issue of crime and violence, so we don't have to worry about who report or don't report. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, but Norris, I think we reached that point now, I don't think we have a boring relationship with the IMF any longer, We sacrificed, we made that that ultimate sacrifice when we were in office the last time, right? So the economy is on fairly reasonable track now, right? That we don't even have to deal with the IMF. It's for us now and our local capitalists in the kind of way that will facilitate, right? I mean, we have really dropped the ball in terms of the social agenda. And really, I mean, when you look like an agency like the National Housing Trust sitting down on billions of dollars. I mean, we took 45 billion out of the trust to help take the IMF out of our backs and kind of help the economy to a certain extent. But it is sitting on billions and billions of dollars and not benefiting the people who need it most. So a question was really is to chart a new economic, a new approach to the economy that now don't exclude so many of our people. And in fact, we have to deliberately find a way to include more and more people. Remember now, our sugar industry is virtually no more, right? Bauxite is all part down, so bauxite is just limping along. So some of the big pillars of the economy has fallen out.
Quickly, the economy has been growing at a rate of 1% for the past 50 years. Despite wait, one more.
Yeah, but take out the last 50 years. The last few
No,
years.
I am saying even to know, if you look at the statistics coming right down, yeah, but that's low growth and so on.
8% predicted for 8% for this year and next year.
Yeah, you percentage at 8% of what?
Well, market cover for low basis IMF. So we have passed those things, we passed we're at a critical point now, where you have a capacity to service the debt and to move forward, right? So the going in capital to the IMF is behind us. The question is how now you deal with it. If you can fix the social agenda, you cannot believe how the economy is going to leap forward, right?
What is the rate of debt prepayment, Bush?
The debt prepayment, no.
What is the rate of payment?
I think it's down like just nearly 100% of GDP, about 100.
We're paying back almost every. That's why we borrow to pay back money.
No, we got a break. You see, I don't have the data with me, but suffice to say that we got a break between the debt buyback from Venezuela and the capital injection out of the housing trust to put us on a path that is better than a lot of countries in our standing. So we are not now a cap in hand to IMF situation any longer, right? But it's for us now to take the bold step. If, for example, we never had the issue of the COVID, right? I mean, the JP will be sitting pretty, but the crime is a problem which we need to fix, which is bedeviled us. Because remember, Michael come with the state of emergency, the gun court, and all those draconian things, right? That is now the real elephant in the room to really fix now and our social agenda for the people, right? And that's a thing. How we're going to deal with that.
One of the ways I think we can assist with the social agenda, comrade. Somebody mentioned earlier music and entertainment. And I remember in the 70s and 80s, I used to coordinate groups going into the pier when a cruise ship coming in Port Antonio and Holt Royals and even board. And we used to perform school group and community group. So there was that linkage. The community was involved and getting reward. Now I'm no more into events management side of things, but I'm understanding that we imported entertainers now to come and perform in the hotels. So we lock out the Jamaicans.
Or globalization.
Exactly. What about a more giant up approach to governance and government, where FDC, JCDC, Minister of Tourism, collaborate and have some more community festivals. So you can have a heritage tour, you have community festival. I think the only festival we have now is Sumfest. In a post-pandemic world, I'm thinking. Yeah. And Rebel Salute. So we have some real community festivals. Community benefit, you take care of some of the crime things and all of that. Mr. Waltz, Comrade Waltz, how you see that?
Yes,
No, man, a
Lawrence,
great
I
idea,
agree
that
with
man.
you.
Yes, man.
Although,
I fully
Comrade
agree.
Butch, I think we have
Mm.
to be careful. I agree with you. We're not cap in hand now. We're not borrowing to pay back now, because that between
No.
2012 and 2016, we really bit the bullet and it transformed that. We reduced the debt to GDP ratio from something like 140 odd to
Mhm.
100 or a little below 100. So we did that. But the
Yeah.
JLP wouldn't be sitting pretty. Up before the pandemic, the growth rate of the economy was not spectacular. I do never
No.
exceed. So this 8% is 8% after an
Of the low base,
18%
yeah.
decline.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
18% decline.
Yeah, but
So,
At a
I
lower
think,
base.
yes, much
I
lower.
know.
It's
Exactly.
coming back. We're
Yeah.
not even where we were before the
Exactly.
pandemic.
You know,
The
but
point
what
Exactly.
I'm
I
saying,
think is,
you have a fallout at the backside
and
industry, you know, and a
Sorry
backside on
to, sorry to
alumina.
interrupt you, Butch.
Mm.
Sorry to
Sorry, sir,
interrupt you,
sorry,
but
sir.
if you look at your watches, you will see that we are
Okay.
all just
overnight.
about
That.
at closing
Yeah,
time.
okay.
Yeah.
So I would like to thank all who participated. I would like to thank the James Walsh to start, who set the tone for the discussion, which was at a very high level, and quite a few people were involved. It's a pity that I hope Alicia and Paul, that for future discussions, we will make a more concerted effort to get the regional representatives and as well and representatives from the union, the youth organization, the women's movement, and so on. If we can even have one representative to join us in this, because we really would like to hear their point of view, not just for them to hear ours, but for us to hear theirs, so we can fine tune our ideas and our approaches here. But I think it was a very good discussion. I think you'll all agree. Next week on our agenda, we'll have a discussion on primary education and our proposal for the integration of primary education. And Maureen Denton is supposed to be the main presenter there. So I just allow Paul, if there's any last minute thing which I have overlooked, if you can come in before we sing the doxology.
Leroy, before you hand over to Paul, I have a
Yeah.
question basically would be directed to Paul. How do you select these people to respond from the YO, from the union, from the shadow ministries and so forth? Because for the past couple of times when we have these presentations, they have all been no show except for Crystal Tomlinson. All of them have been no show. So how do you select them and what do you say to them? And even when they don't show, what do they say to you?
Before Paul comes in, apart from Crystal Tomlinson, I can remember at one session, Region 6 Chairman Colin Hitchman was there.
Oh,
I
yes.
remember Dennis Gordon making an intervention on one thing. So a few of them have been here. So Paul, can you take over and give us any information that we need to have before I close off?
All right. So good afternoon, good evening, everybody. And I'm sorry, I was in and out. I don't know why I don't have my laptop. But nonetheless, the point made by Leroy and Georgia is real. Alisa did make efforts. I personally will have to just try and do some phone calls for the next one, call people personally. But they were informed more than once. We don't select the reps. We write to the chairs of the 6 regions, to the arms, the affiliates, and ask them if they cannot be present, please select someone from their organization to represent them. But the point is where Leroy and Georgia, the participation has been kind of disappointing.
Yeah, it has been. It has been. And if this is a reflection of the way forward that the party is responding to us, who is trying to do or to help to pave the way forward, then it is really a sad situation.
And Georgia, you can't just look at it that way. I will tell you, too many of our comrades' Zoom meetings are not interested or exciting or attractive, right? That is one. Two, I don't know that we have maximized marketing our activities. Alice and I met today and how we're going to get some professional input, even though there's a cost to our flyers, trying to get them out earlier. We are proposing there's a managing committee meeting on Wednesday. Alice will send that out. We're proposing that the next Sunday be the last one for the year, and some other activities. We are going to have a discussion next week, Saturday, among some people as to how we plan the symposium on youth activism. Well, maybe we have to add consciousness and spirituality. I don't know, but we're going to have that discussion so we can plan those symposiums. We are still going ahead with the Michael Manley birthday. We're doing it on the 9th of December, not the 10th, because we expect some other activities to be on the 10th. And we're certainly celebrating the 15th of December. We are doing a flyer, which we hope you'll see this week, the planning committee. Anybody who wants to join the planning committee is welcome. We're going to put up on the wider fraternity. But we recognize that the participation, even from our 70s fraternity group, is not where we'd want it to be. I've been calling some people personally. You know that Sefton apologized. You know, Maureen and Angela are usually on, but we have a regular faithful few. Butch and Norris have joined us. Angela is there when she can. That's Angela Duncan. Sharon is here most of the time. Katie, we know you are 6 hours ahead of us, right? We see some new faces. Glendon, thank you. Dorrit Headley, I say Lurleen Barnett. Dexter Rowland has been very regular recently. But I also want to say a special word to Gareth Gilfillian. Gareth Gilfillian is the chairman of PNP UK, and I'm happy to see him join us. And again, he would be at 11 o'clock tonight. So Gareth, thanks for joining us. We have to market better, and this is really a dry run, but we really have to increase the tempo next year. We can't be going down the line and only.
One other question, Paul.
Just for George as well. But I want to tell you.
Paul, I believe.
Yeah,
another Zoom meeting.
Yeah. One of the discussions, we cut the salient points into videos. So all of these presentations will be on our PNPYO YouTube channel, and the salient points in videos. Georgia, do the planning, come to the planning meeting, make not do the planning on this platform, please.
Okay, no problem.
Okay, Leroy, I have said my bits and pieces. Thank you.
Okay,
right,
Paul. If Paul, if you could send me the email addresses of these new attendees, I'd be very grateful. So
we don't have all of them, but those who we can, we will send.
Okay. So thank you all. Next week, remember, it's primary education we're talking about. Thank you all and good night.
Night.
And thank you, Dorrit, for coming.
Night.
Appreciate it, and take 2 more comrades with you next time.
Sorry you didn't see my beautiful face.
I will indeed.
Pardon me, Paul?
Which Dorrit are we speaking of?
Dorrit Headley. I invited her. I reminded her she's here.
That used to work.
I invited quite a number, but they haven't shown up.
Boy, Dorrit, welcome. I called him and I really made the connection.
Okay.
Thumbs up, Dorrit.
I put my email in the chat. If you look.
Thank you, Dorrit.
Okay, so you get the emails now. I wish, and I mean, if each of us keep pushing others to come and one come every time, we will grow the numbers.
I sent the thing to Dorrit, but I think I sent it late. Dorrit Aarons.
Oh, okay. Oh.
And
Okay.
anybody can WhatsApp their email address. I don't. To 815-6666. That's 815-6666.
Thanks, everyone.
Night,
Okay.
night.
Important. Thanks for
Usually it's good to
All the
see the
best.
faces or the pictures of the puppets. Have a
Okay,
All,
thank you.
all the
Have a
best,
good,
everyone.
have a
Thank
good
you.
night.
Bye.
And
Yes.
and the rest of
Bye,
the week.
everyone.
Bye bye.
Bye.